Okay, Kimberly, it's showing live now, so.
Yep, we just booting up. And we are now live, Chair.
Thank you. Order. Good morning, councillors and any members of the public, wherever you may be watching on YouTube. This is a meeting of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee of Waverley Borough Council, with members of the committee present, and we also have officers here to assist us. Richard Homewood, the Head of Environmental and Regulatory Services. Paul Hughes from the Licensing. We also have Borough Solicitor and Democratic Services present. Moving to the agenda, we received the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 2021. Are those agreed?
That should have been.
Chairman, I would like to actually just question that if it's possible.
Yes, well, I'll question it first because I read it out, and of course it should say 2020. So to just correct that, that's the December the 10th.
I will change that, Chair. Yes.
2020. And Councillor Hyman.
Yes, thank you. Okay, if I can, I think we're at page 7, aren't we? Just bear with me a second.
We're at the very first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's useful to use page numbers if we can, Chairman. Yeah, at the top it says submitted to the council meeting and then the date bit, which I know you've brought up a number of times, Chairman.
Yeah, it was. They were submitted to council already. I mean, this is some of the faster way things have run ever since I've been on the council. You can have minutes go to council before they come back for approval. And I'm not sure how that really works because they haven't been approved by the committee yet. They go to council, but these have been to council. I think. Yeah,
that date will be added before it goes into the minute book, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks. But my concern in respect of this is that at that meeting, and I'm pretty sure that I've got the. I'm talking about the right meeting because this is again slightly confusing with 3 sets of minutes in front of us. The minutes failed to mention that I did request clarification in respect of the problem that has been had on Firgrove Hill for the Sun and Moon Cafe, and that's something which is not being solved. Obviously, I'll be addressing the similar matters in the item as it comes at item 8. We were told at the time that it does not apply. But that is missing from the minutes, absolutely certainly, because there were 2 main issues that are covered by the street trading review. One of them, of course, is Milford, and the other one is Farnham Firgrove. And the Farnham Firgrove one I queried, and this coming policy doesn't solve it. So I'd like that to be mentioned in the minutes that it was raised, please, because otherwise it looks like I'm not serving my members. So if that could be checked, if you as chairman don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll check that.
Thanks very much indeed. Sorry to take time. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We will include that, but members must be aware that minutes are not a verbatim record of what was said. Minutes are of decisions, but I think it's quite important that should be in. So it's not a resume of what was said. It's minutes are technically of decisions made. Thank you. So are they agreed? Everybody just wave if they're
agreed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any apologies for absence or substitutions, please, Kimberly?
I've had no apologies from absence, Chair. However, I have noted that Councillor Blishen is not in attendance at the moment.
Thank you. That's good to know. Should the broadcast fail, or anybody disappear because of technical reasons, and Councillor Mrs. Keane has already said that she may have problems and going now, we will pause to try and reconnect. If the YouTube fails, we'll pause for a short time, and if not, we'll record and make it available. Just for members of the public that may be watching, we realise that Zoom meetings are not satisfactory and seem quite disjointed, and people disappear and come back, but that's for technical reasons beyond our control. We can only apologise under the current emergency. Are there any declarations of interest, please, Kimberly?
None received, Chair.
Are there any questions from members of the public?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. I take it there are no questions from members.
No, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 6 are authorised actions taken by the Executive Director in consultation with the Chairman and Vice Chairman. There haven't been any, so there are none to note. Item 7 is licensing subcommittee C, which was held on the 8th of February. The minutes of that are here to note on pages 11 to 14. They noted.
Chairman, if I may beg your indulgence once again, because I do know that you have a little bit of sympathy with me in trying to make sure things are done right. And if you'd look at page 12, if you don't mind, in the second paragraph there, you'll see on the 4th line, there's words running into each other. Then on the 6th and 7th and 9th and 11th and 12th, for some reason, it appears that this hasn't been proofread, that bit. And I'd just like to ask that somebody checks that paragraph, because there's been a little software glitch that's run words into each other. And
where, Councillor Hyman? Because I can't see that.
Page 12, 4th line down. If you go into the second paragraph, we've got main antisocial becomes one long word, and nuisance may at the end of 2 lines further down. Oh, hang on. Am I on the right?
Okay. Yeah.
It's in both.
I've got main antisocial.
Yeah, and the 2 lines down at the end of that, nuisance may, and then the next line, caused appeared, and then
okay. Yeah.
And then
all right, I'll go through that then. No problem.
Yeah, just a few bits like that. I mean, I'm not entirely sure that it's the place to question this, because I note the item that actually went through that in the following paragraph, the advice given, or certainly the decision made by the councillors on that committee, was that the licensing hours did not impact upon the likely impacts, and was yet to be determined, but that didn't matter. And on the following page, there are licensing hours, but it's for the full time, till midnight. And I'm just sure, is it possible that decision should be relooked, or can be? Because I don't know if that's true.
No, Councillor Hyman, what it was, the licensing hours, the decision the committee was making was nothing to do with the actual licensing hours. Sorry, the opening hours. It was to do with the licensing hours, not the opening hours.
Right. Okay. And in the 4th line up from the bottom, there's one more very long word, furthermore that. I don't know, I mean, I know nevertheless and other words like that, but I don't know the word furthermore that.
Okay, this was agreed by the solicitor, so.
Fair dues, I'll leave it with that. I'm just worried that nobody else had read those minutes and wanted to query whether this lot was intentional or not.
Yeah, it had been read by the solicitor before it was agreed.
Yeah,
okay,
I'd like people to read them before they agree things.
The decision, however, was quite clear at the meeting and verbally given that the application was approved unanimously by the committee. And
I'll take your assurance on that. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Those minutes are noted. Just give me a wave if everybody's happy they're noted. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 8 is the street trading review, which is set out on pages 15 to 54 of your agenda. And I will ask Richard Homewood, the officer who is responsible for this, to introduce the item to us. Thank you. Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. You'll recall that back at your December meeting, we presented an initial paper on a review of street trading. And that at that meeting, it was agreed that we'd go out to public consultation on the proposed amendments to the street trading policy. This report is feeding back or reporting back to you the feedback from that public consultation. You will note from the report that overwhelmingly the response was in support of the proposal to designate all streets within the borough consent streets, except for those that are already prohibited streets. And there were very few responses that opposed that way forward. We did emphasise all the way through, this is about striking a balance between the rights of the community not to be impacted adversely by street trading activity, but also to ensure that where it is appropriate, street trading activity can take place under a set of conditions. And the whole purpose of having all of the streets in the borough designated as consent streets is that the council then has some control over what happens in terms of street trading. At the moment, a vast majority of streets within the borough aren't designated consent streets, and that means we have no control over what goes on. And we have experience in one or two cases where that's had a significantly adverse impact on the community. So our proposal is to go forward with the designation of consent streets, so that all streets in the borough are designated consent streets unless they're already designated prohibited streets. And the annexes to the report give the detail of where the prohibited streets are. I don't think I need to go into huge detail in it. I wasn't clear quite what Councillor Hyman meant by we haven't addressed the issue with Farnham Firgrove, so perhaps he could comment on that for me in a bit more detail. But overwhelmingly, there is support for the proposal to go forward, and we would certainly be recommending to you that we publish the notices in the press as required by law, telling the public that the designation of all streets as consent streets will go ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Richard. That's quite concise. I think colleagues looking at it, you'll see there is general, the overwhelming support to it, particularly from the people of Milford, who have responded quite a great deal. And having driven through Milford on Friday afternoon, I saw there were two vans, one within about 100 yards of each other. So yes, I can see why they responded. Now I think Councillor James had her hand up first. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Apropos of obviously of Milford, can the officers confirm at the moment that van has a licence, I believe, from Rushmore to trade? Will all the streets in Waverley have to be licensed by Waverley? That's therefore, it would be up to members and officers to decide in Waverley whether we want the van in a certain place or not up to Rushmore. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Councillor James. And the short answer is every street would have to be approved by Waverley, but I'll ask Richard to confirm that.
Yes, I can confirm that, Chair. Within Waverley Borough Council area, it is for Waverley Borough Council to licence under the street trading legislation, not another borough. Another borough, and we weren't ever clear on this, another borough can register a business as a food business, but that doesn't give it a licence to trade within Waverley. They would have to come to us for a licence to trade once these provisions are in place.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. Yes, just some matters of clarification here. If I can ask you to turn to page 17 of papers, which is paragraph 4.11 about the formal consultation, Chairman. And you'll see that we're advised, quite correctly, I believe, that we have to allow not less than 28 days for representations to be made. There's another 28-day period, I understand, which is that we have to advertise it for. Before it's actually put in place. We're on the 1st of March. We're looking to put this in place from the 1st of April, which is 30 full or 29 working days or 30 working days away. I understand we have to give 28 days. So we, from the first of 2 notices that are put into the local newspapers. And I'm just wondering, can we, if it goes into the Farnham Herald on Thursday, noting that April the 1st, All Fool's Day, is also a Thursday, and if it doesn't go into a different paper till the next day, or depending on what day the newspapers are published, and assuming that we can get our notices in for this week, can you confirm? I mean, we seem to be either skating on thin ice or I don't know. Has somebody actually thought about, do these full 28 working days or whatever is 28 days necessary? Do they actually fit into the into this month happily? That's my first point, but I've got quite a lot of other points as I've run through that I just want to check up on. Thanks.
If I can on that, Chair, obviously we were anticipating this meeting to be held last week, which would have given us the 28 days by the 1st of April. We may have to adjust the effective date by a few days to fit the 28 days in, but the public notices are already lined up to go in the press this week, subject to your approval of the policy.
Thank you very much.
But if they have the wrong date on them, that we can't actually meet with the I'm trying to avoid.
Councillor Hyman, I think, but that's been covered. It will be adjusted so that we are within the 28 days.
Okay.
Thank you.
As a matter of accuracy, on that on page 19 at the top, paragraph 427 said 1 response wanted their local councillor to feedback on the policy. It was referring to Councillor Gale. But when I turned to the page, there were 2 of them, and I'm wondering what is the relevance of this in terms of Councillor Gale feeding back on it. Why are we being told this, and what does it mean to me? Because I'm not entirely sure what we should be doing about that. What that means to us. If you look, the responses are on page 31. These are responses numbered 4 and 5. So if you're on the table on page 31 and you look down the very bottom, you can see 4 and 5 both, I think, say in please in the right hand column, please refer to Councillor Gale. And then underneath they say 8 and 9, survey 8 and survey 9. And I'm not sure whether therefore they should be referred to as 4 or 5. I find that confusing, and you can explain that possibly. But you can see that it says that 1 response wanted that, and I've got 2 there, and I'm wondering, is that just something we gloss over or what? Next issue. 4 point on page 21. Very bottom, 4.46, it says this, and this is one of the recommendations, so it's the important bit to us. It says it's recommended we agree to the draft notice that passed a resolution on street trading and designation, and the wording of that I'm slightly unsure of, Chairman, as you might be, because you'd have thought you'd use the word of instead of to the draft notice to pass a resolution or whatever it is. I don't really think that's I was just confused by that. So if we can move on from that one. I was asked if I would clarify for officers, with your indulgence, Chairman, the issue of Firgrove. This is where we had an issue with a cafe that's there allowing another business, a food van, to park in the parking spaces out the front, adjacent to the shops which are either side, which have people living above. And of course, the smells from it were something which were a big problem for a period over a period of a year or so. And the problem almost came back. It's not a problem at the moment, but when I queried it at the meeting, because obviously residents of Firgrove Ward, a number of them were particularly concerned and expected this street trading review to solve that issue. It is not absolutely clear in here, I think, as to whether or not it does. I was told at the meeting that it doesn't solve the problem because that is private land, so it's not actually footway. If we look at page...
I think we understand. I'll ask the officers to answer that. I think on the item of one representation, as long as we've seen them all and they are there, that is fine. But can we deal with the Firgrove bit, please? Richard?
Well, the second bullet of 4.42, you'll see, Chairman, on page 21, says that the Appendix 1 makes it clear a consent street includes a road, footway or other area to which the public have access without payment, but does not include buildings.
Yes.
And then if
That's
you look
why
on
we'll ask Mr. Homewood to deal with that now, because I think we need to get that quite clear before we get tangled with anything else. So, Richard, the position of this van outside a shop, I'm reading it that if it's adjacent to the highway and the public have access, it's covered by this.
Yeah, thank you. I'm struggling to flick between 20 pages on the screen at the moment, but
So it was best to have a hard copy. You don't have
unfortunately,
then, which you know that we do have.
So I'm just trying to find the bit. There is an amendment which we've made to the policy, which says that it doesn't apply to buildings, but it does apply to things like car parks of buildings and areas outside of buildings where the public have free access. I'm just trying to flip back to the policy itself.
It's on 4.42, yeah, and it does say it includes the road, footway or other area to which the public have access without payment, but does not include buildings. So I think that clearly covers the situation that concerned Mr. Hyman, does it not?
Yes, it used to say premises, so we changed it to buildings because premises could include the car parking areas. So we changed it to buildings so that the street trading legislation does cover the areas outside of a building, even if they're private. But if the public have free access to them without payment, then they are covered by the street trading policy. I will find the relevant part of the policy which picks that up, Chair.
Thank you. I think that makes it quite clear. Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 19, 4.31, I just want to query the response from the Environmental Health Food team. They're asking that street traders have a rating of 3 or more, which I totally agree with. But would they have to, and I'm sure they do, but I'm just querying this, have a certificate on show on their vehicle to prove that they have got this this rating from the Food Standards Agency?
If I can, Chair, the certificates are issued by the local authority, not by the Food Standards Agency. And just like any business, food business premises, they can display in the window the food hygiene rating. It's a green sign with the numbers on, highlighting what their rating is. And we would either see that displayed on the vehicle, and most people, if they're 3 and above, want to display it to demonstrate that they are complying with the hygiene rules. Very rarely does somebody display a 0 or a 1, but certainly they will display it, or we can ask to see it when they visit the vehicle. The rating is given by the local authority where the vehicle is based, not by Waverley Borough Council necessarily, but we can ask to see it, or they will display it if it's a good rating.
Thank you. Yeah, that appears to have answered the question. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, have we done? Everybody happy? Okay, then we'll go.
No, Chairman.
Chairman,
Actually,
Councillor Hyman has his hand up.
Okay, I can't see everybody, so yeah, okay. I didn't know. Councillor Hyman, is your hand still up, or is that from last time? I don't know whether they go up or down.
Thank you. No, I took it down and put it back up again to indicate that I hadn't quite finished the points that I was going through. Having
I can't. Unfortunately, I can't see that. They go up and down. So
I understand your difficulty, Chairman. It's not at all blaming you. Just if I can turn us quickly to, I know we've got a large taxi items come. Page 46 of our papers now, which is within the policy itself, and under enforcement. There, we'll see that we've got, well, you'll see that at points C and G, we've got the enforcement policy link there put under both places, which are the same, and it's unnecessary to put it twice. Actually, it can just be put once in, and I don't think that our policy should, just a little minor tidying, but more to the point here. If you look in C, little c, it says, take appropriate enforcement action in accordance with the enforcement policy. And under G, it says that the decision will be made on a case-by-case basis in light of the council's enforcement policy. And I think the two are completely different things, and I don't know whether they're intentional. I would always expect things to be in accordance with the policy rather than simply in the light of. And I'm wondering if it could be explained whether we should perhaps change G to have in accordance with, which I would prefer, and you might too, Chairman, I would have thought. Or whether there's a good reason for that. I might just be being overly picky, but I think the wording is often very important. Otherwise, why have we got a policy if the words aren't important, Chairman? Let's just forget about the policy otherwise. And again on page 48, where it says under here, you'll see the green blotch at the top of page 48 there, where the change has been taken, which Richard Homewood referred to, removing the all commercial premises bit there. But again, the issue here, Chairman, is that at the meeting, which was November meeting or whatever it was, when we went through this, I was told quite firmly, in fact, I was told to be careful because I was saying a number of my residents would be particularly upset that this policy did not address the issue in Firgrove. It didn't solve it, and we were going to have to go through environmental health, which hadn't been able to do anything about it previously. I'm going to be told, I think, in a few weeks' time, if we put this through as it is, that, oh, no, actually, Councillor Hyman, Firgrove isn't covered by it, whereas you and I, at the moment, from the position we're in at this meeting, might reasonably assume that it has been covered and is covered. And I want to be absolutely certain, and I don't know whether perhaps Gillian should be has the knowledge on this, or who would. I want to be absolutely certain that a change has been made that does actually cover the issue at Firgrove Hill, or whether it has not. Absolute clarity.
Well, we will ask for that, but I think the words that we referred to earlier make it quite clear that any area outside of the building to which the public can access counts.
Yes, well,
that is quite clear, I would have thought, but
well, it may not
Gillian.
be. Chairman, there are terms such as public access land and whatever. So, legally, actually being able to access something is, can they access it only by permission, or can they access it by right? And in this case, I think because these are parking spaces owned by the premises themselves, the shops, that we cannot enforce upon. This policy would not apply because they're actually owned by the shops. So it's not public access land. Or even though people can obviously access it, because if they don't, they can't go in the shop because they need to walk across it. So, but I want absolute certainty, please, on this, and clarity, because otherwise I might wish to, query whether we can make an amendment to ensure that it is covered, if it can be. And if it can't be, I can't make that amendment. So if I could have absolute clarity on whether it's covered, the issues that arose in Firgrove. Because I'm now being told the opposite to what we were 2 or 3 months ago. Thanks.
Gillian, are you in a position to assist?
Oh, Gillian, well, Chairman, Gillian has changed to Daniel today. I'm afraid she's not
Oh,
available.
sorry.
So,
I can't
Chairman.
Daniel.
So I've morphed, and of course, Chairman, you'll remember that.
I can't see you on my screen because I only get knocked up, Daniel. I apologise.
That's fine, Chairman. No apology needed. And you remember, of course, I've got plenty of experience supporting you on licensing committees. So the law is very clear, and Richard has set it out, which is that that street trading is the Act applies to any area to which the public have access to without payment. When it comes to private land, if they do not have the permission of the landowner to be there, then that's an issue between them and the landowner. I don't know what the issue is at Firgrove, and I don't think it will do much good to go into any detail about this situation there, because the position regards policy making is that you shouldn't be creating a policy to deal with one specific issue. So we need to be careful here. But the law is very clear. Whether it's private or public land, if the public can access it without payment, then this policy and the Act can apply to any street trading that takes place on the land. So if the land is fenced off, or if it's closed in some way, and it's private land, then clearly people are not supposed to be on it. You would say that really it's not land that the public have a right of access to. But if it's open land like a car park on an industrial estate, or outside a row of shops, or whatever it might be, and the public can walk across there without any form of payment, then the Act will bite, or can bite, if the local authority designates a street as a consent street, or a licensed street, or a prohibited street. As I say, I don't know what the situation is at Firgrove, but Richard has set it out very clearly. But we should be careful not to create a policy that is predetermining what might happen in respect of a particular situation. But I hope that that's clear enough for Councillor Hyman in terms of what he's got in mind regarding the situation at Firgrove.
I think my residents will want to know that I've checked up on this properly, and I've had an answer. It may simply be that we don't know whether it applies or not, but I am getting exactly the opposite to what I was told at the last meeting.
Yeah, Hyman, we've made an amendment since then, so that's why it's different. We've taken out what would have allowed it to be as you're fearing, and I think the Borough Solicitors made it quite clear that unless it's fenced off and you're not allowed in there, it is part of the consent street it runs off.
Okay, and if we find out that actually we're mistaken at this point, and it is not covered, and my residents are upset, who is accountable for this, please? Because otherwise I'd try and influence the decision in order to change it.
But tell us how you're going to influence it then, Councillor Hyman. What words are you going to put in that change it? Because the law is quite clear. The Borough Solicitor just outlined the law to you. I don't think you can amend.
Well, I would add the word including private land. I think because that is where it should be, and presumably that would have to be in one of the paragraphs that I've already highlighted. And I'm happy to go back to them at 25. And
no, thank you very much, Daniel. Can we put including private land, or is that out with the law?
Richard's got his hand up, so he may wish to comment on that. That's not out with the law. It does apply to private land if the public have access to it without payment. But so the law is law, and the policy will apply if the land is of the correct status to enforce against, I suppose, or license or give a consent to. But Richard may want to comment.
Richard, thank you.
Yeah, I can, Chair. As you say, we've made an amendment because it was the words commercial premises that caused the problem, because commercial premises could include that land. So we've taken that out. So it's quite clear it's just the buildings now. And if the owner of the building, say it's a greengrocer, is putting his own goods out on his forecourt, he's not covered by street trading legislation because it's part of the business in the property. But if he allows a separate business onto that forecourt, then that is covered by street trading legislation, because it's a separate business and a separate entity from the property. And it is any land which is open to the public without payment. And all shop forecourts and car parks of buildings that trade with the public are open to the public without payment. If somebody charges to park in a car park, then that's where it may become an issue. But certainly our intention is that this will apply to any private property that's open to the public and which a separate business is trading on from the business in the property itself. So the van in Firgrove will be covered by this new policy.
I absolutely agree with that, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, I think that therefore we have the officer and the borough solicitor saying that is covered, and I think we have no alternative but to accept that. And it seems to me the national law is quite clear. It's any area that is open to the public that adjoins the highway or the designated street is covered, and I don't think it can be much clearer than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And if we can just check, please, that, for instance, on page 54, where it says that this takes effect from the 1st of April 2021, if we're changing that date, can we ensure that it is changed in the documents? Because at the moment, we've been told we'll vary the date if necessary to fit in the period, the legally required period. But obviously, these documents don't reflect that. Again, 53, the resolution of 1st of April 2021. I think we need to be clear as to what date we are actually going to be applying this from. Sorry to be a pain, Chairman. Thank you.
Chairman, Chairman, shall I pick that up? So obviously the notice is not part of the recommendation. The recommendations are and I'm just going back to see whether they have the dates in them. But just for your comfort as a committee, any public notice that is before it's published is checked to ensure that the dates work. And Richard's already explained that the date may need to shift because the date of this meeting shifted. So that date may well change, and that's absolutely fine, but it doesn't need to change in the papers. And I can't see a reference to 1st of April in the recommendations. It's just that when that notice was drafted for the purposes of the agenda, those are the intended dates. So yes, if it needs to change, it will change before it's published, obviously. Otherwise, it wouldn't be lawful.
Thank you, Chairman. If I refer you to page 53 at the bottom, Annex E says 1st of April. At the top, it says a resolution on street trading and designations. I'm just assuming when it says it's a resolution, it might be a resolution, but I can't be sure about that, of course.
Well, we deal with the recommendation as set out in the agenda, and it doesn't give the date of implementation, and it will be adjusted, obviously, to be within the law. The solicitors won't allow us to publish a notice that is unlawful, and we will deal with that. Maybe the 1st of April actually just does click in, but I don't, because certainly the Herald comes out on the Thursday, but here, but where it does everywhere, I don't know. Richard.
Yeah, I mean, the resolution Annex F on page 54 is a draft notice. It's not the definitive notice, it's a draft to illustrate how the notice will be worded. And as Daniel said, we will adjust that date. And we will probably adjust that so that it's a minimum of 28 days before it takes effect. So it will probably take effect on, say, Monday the 5th of April rather than the 1st of April, which will give us the clear 28 days from publication in the press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. I was referring to Annex E, not the draft one, but to Annex E, which doesn't say it's a draft, and it's to the resolution. But let's leave it at that. So we can talk at cross purposes for a long time.
Yes, thank you very much. Anyone else, please? Kimberly, is there anybody else with their hand up? Because I can't see them all. No.
I can't see anybody else waving, Chairman.
Richard's got his hand up now. But that might be from the
No,
past.
I think he's just taking it down, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, let's move to the recommendations, which are on the agenda, item 8. And the recommendation is that the licensing committee notes the feedback on the formal consultation and agrees the draft street trading policy 2021 passes the resolution agreed at the licensing committee in December 2020 and agrees the draft notice, I think we had to say as amended if appropriate,
yeah.
that the council has passed the street trading and designation of consent and prohibited streets and rescinds earlier resolutions and designations of streets within Waverley. Is that agreed? If you could unmute and say agreed or wave your hand.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Then that is agreed as set out in the agenda. The next item is the taxi licensing policies, which is set out on pages 55 to 164. And I'm going to ask Mr. Hughes to introduce the item and any suggested amendments due to the responses to the consultation. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, you have in front of you a report regarding the consultation process and responses to the proposed changes to the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire policy. Many of the changes were following the government's publication of the statutory taxi and private hire vehicle standards. Other changes included the introduction of an age policy and ultra-low emission vehicles. Officers would like to make you aware that following COVID-induced delays, members may wish to consider further pushing back the dates of the introduction of the new vehicle to be licensed under 3 years old from the 1st of April 2021. That's on the 3rd paragraph on page 85 of the report. It's also mentioned on subsequent pages. The existing vehicle, 7 years old and over, will cease to be licensed after the 31st of December 2022 and must be under 7 years after the 1st of January 2023. That's on page 85, 4th paragraph. Also, the age regarding new vehicles to be ultra low emission vehicles on January 2023. Which is paragraph 5 on page 85, and all vehicles to be ultra low emission vehicles by the 1st of January 2030, which is paragraph 6, page 85. Just to make you aware, we currently have approximately 192 licensed vehicles, and 132 of those would be 7 years or older in January 2023, with a further 23 reaching 7 years old in 2023 itself. Officers would like to advise the committee that on page 77, the last word, it says that officers anticipate the date for all drivers to have their DBS online will be March 2023. That will obviously now, because it's from April this year, that will have to change to March 2024. Also, there's a mistake on page 113 of the report, 3D, states 7 days. This should be 14 days. Earlier on, somebody mentioned regarding the Annex 3 and 4 being the same. Looking at the report, they are exactly the same. Annex 3 has been repeated twice, and Annex 4 is Annex 5. There is no Annex 5, but in the report, an extra annex has been added, and Annex 4 is actually Annex 5. Over the weekend, we had one last comment come in from a driver, so I'll just read it out. It's a short paragraph, basically. He said that they cannot stress enough how change to present conditions, particularly the vehicle requirements, will devastate the number of local living drivers who actually live in Waverley. As you appreciate, the level of trade at this time, I would say, is 80% down, with a number of drivers seeking alternative employment. This will leave you with a stock of drivers that you no doubt are aware of. I would ask that the committee be made aware of mine and other drivers' major concerns. Officers request that you consider the recommendations of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. Yes, and I note the last, and I'm sure members noted the last remarks that you've had in about devastating local drivers and 80% down. I see the taxi rank at Hazelmere railway station only has 1 or 2 taxis ever there, but the trains, which used to be packed and that you only got 5 coaches, are now 12 and roll in with 1 person on, which seems quite amazing, but there we are. So I doubt there is much trade. So let's open this up to members. Quite clearly, that annex that Councillor Hyman earlier referred to, with being double, it shouldn't be there at all. Annex 5 should be Annex 4, and that shouldn't be there. But anyway, we now know the situation. Members, Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. With regard to the renewal of vehicles in 2023, I think given the situation that COVID has brought upon us, and speaking to some of the taxi drivers, there is a lot of concern amongst them that they would not be able to possibly change their vehicles in 2023, because obviously last year and part of this year, it's decimating their trade. So I would be more than happy if the committee agreed that we rolled over to 2024 to change vehicles that are 7 years and or coming up to 7 years. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It does seem, does it not, but this would have all been published a year ago, and we're now bringing the change in the next year, and that does seem perhaps a little unreasonable, and it may be, if the committee agree, is sensible to move those dates on page 85 all back by a year, apart from the 2031, which I think members may or may not wish to leave it is, but those that come in immediately, I think by immediately I mean this year or next year, so that could be seen as being very unreasonable. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chairman. Part of the reason why we wanted to introduce the age limits in the first place was to try and improve the effluent from our vehicles, public vehicles. However, I'm entirely in agreement with what you have been suggesting, as indeed has Councillor Keane, that we should defer this. The economic situation is such that we really cannot penalise our taxi drivers, and I suggest we may want to take a note in a year's time whether we want to revise that date again, mindful of how the economy picks up, because I think we do need to maintain a good, healthy taxi service in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Darcy. You're muted, Mark. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, on page 58 of the, unfortunately, I've got 2 versions, one on my iPad and one on my PC, and they don't have the same numbers, which is slightly unfortunate. But on our agenda papers and the introductory bit, page 58, I think it is, in the package on the iPad, it says section 7.1, right at the bottom, from the 1st of January 2027, new licenses must only include zero emission vehicles. So there's a mention of the date of the 1st of January 27 and zero emissions. But in the actual document policy, there is no mention of zero emission vehicles. It says ULEV and it says 2030. This is on page 21 and 24 in the PDF version. I've no idea what page that would be.
Most of us looking at this is easier, yes. Okay, I can see what you're referring to. That there is a different dates, and I'll ask the officers to deal with that in a moment.
Yeah.
So,
it's not just a different date. It also, one of them says ULEV, and
yes.
the other one says zero emission, and the two things are different.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I think Mr. Hughes is making a note and looking into that as we speak. And anything else, Martin?
Just to say that having read all the taxi drivers' comments, I can totally sympathise with their predicament, and that we should indeed push the dates, perhaps. I also wonder why we're introducing the 7 year. I know the idea was to try and tie it all in together so that we managed to get all the petrol and diesel cars out by the dates that we'd set. And that's why we set the 7 year thing. But I do wonder if perhaps 7 years is a bit too zealous, given that according to the figures that Paul's given us, 69% of the taxis will have to be replaced. I've got a little spreadsheet by 2023. 69% of them, 132 vehicles, which, given the circumstances economically for them, it seems extreme. And then the following year, another 12%. So by 2024, 81% of all the taxis would have to be replaced. You know, I'm wondering, is this viable? I'd love them all to go electric, obviously.
Yes,
but,
yes.
Yeah, we have to be reasonable and fair to them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hughes, can you deal with that as we go along?
Yeah, it should be ultra low emission vehicles, and it would be from all new vehicles licensed after 2023 should be ultra low emission vehicles, and from 2030 all vehicles should be ultra low emission vehicles.
What about the remark that the line on page 58 at 7.1, which says from the 1st of January 2027, new licenses must only include zero emission vehicles.
Now that's why I said I think that should read ultra low emission vehicles.
Ultra low emission, but it's also a different date. 2020.
Yeah. So I think that's possibly a mix up from the above line from it. It should be 2023. New applications should be ultra low emission vehicles.
Right, but we need to clarify that because we've got two quite different things. One saying 2023, new must be ultra low emission, and then 2027 where it says zero. But if we change that to ultra low emission, it's the same as the previous line.
Yeah, I think it's a repeat. I think it should that line should have been deleted, and the corrected one was left. It is the one above.
So we delete the 2027 remark on page 58.
Yes.
Thank you. Just so we know where we are, and the 2023 will probably change anyway. So we'll come to that. Now, thank you, Martin. Have you done, because your hand's still up, but that's okay. That's the system, I'm afraid. Okay. Anyone else? And then Councillor Hyman, your hand, I see now, I've gone to the next screen. There you are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you indeed, Chairman. Yeah, I think actually we do need to be quite sure what it is that we are inflicting upon taxi drivers. If members have all read through all of the papers, you can see that if we go ahead with what is being suggested, and even if we take on board your suggestion of simply pushing things back a year, which really wouldn't address what the taxi drivers are concerned about. Virtually everyone that has responded, and I'm quite sure from what we've seen, also people who haven't, there's a lot of taxi drivers who haven't responded, their attitude is this is absolute madness. To do anything like this in the situation where we're in is like sticking a dagger in their hearts and making them unemployed. And we can't do this. We do not have to change the age rules at the moment. It's only 4 years, I gather, since we last did it, or 3 years or something. We're going to be doing it again in another 3 years or 4 years' time, supposedly. It's been made absolutely clear, I think, from the taxi drivers what they have put forward alternative suggestions, trying to be positive, because none of them want to turn around and say, well, we don't want to become environmentally more friendly or whatever. But there are issues with, for instance, electric vehicles in a taxi rank. Everybody wants to get into a warm taxi. In a petrol or diesel car, you've got a water-fed hot water from the heat of the engine. They leave the engines running all the time. And that keeps the heater hot and it keeps the taxi warm. Once you close the doors, someone's in a cold day, and this isn't the hottest country in the world. People are nice and toasty in the taxi. With electric cars, it's not the same. If taxi drivers are going to be ready to take a fare up to the airport or whatever with enough charge in the battery, if they can't have the any form of electric heater on first, because that would sap the capacity, then it's going to make life very difficult unless we are ready with the infrastructure. So the question then, as has been raised by the drivers themselves, who's going to be putting in the electric charging points on all of the taxi ranks and make sure there's an excess, there's enough for everybody who might pull up. There are issues with this, which aren't just down to, okay, give us the definition of a ULEV. Ultra low emission vehicles, we're saying that it should be ULEV, but actually we've got Euro 3, Euro 6, and I'm not entirely sure whether Euro 7's been brought in. What standards are we actually talking about that they're going to have to abide by? As far as I'm concerned, we should put this off for the time being. Obviously, the 2030 date, no one is arguing with, and I think that's but that's far enough away for us to be able to address it at another time. I'm not saying we have to junk all the changes that are made in this policy, because there are other issues that are addressed there as well in the changes that are being brought forward. I'm only talking about the age rules on the vehicles. Certainly, the taxi drivers have said 3 years of age is at licensing as a maximum is ridiculous, because vehicles have not lost most of their value by then, the ones that are coming out of the lease fleets and whatever. That needs to be 4 years old as a bare minimum. And the age of cars, this is as though, to them, this is as though we're from another planet and we simply don't understand cars, taxiing, or anything about business. That's what it looks like to them. And if you see some of the ways that some of them have written it, they've been perfectly blunt. And I agree absolutely with what they're saying.
Okay, thank you.
I've been through the whole lot. I've been through the lot, Chairman. I would like some clarification, please, before we get into the discussion on this, as to what we ought to be doing in terms of age and whatever. Can you clarify, please? This is a track changes document, which I can't understand, because I've got red stuff that isn't struck out, blue stuff that isn't underlined, stuff highlighted in yellow. And if someone could tell me what's new, what is removed, and well, what does being highlighted in yellow mean? What does red mean? And what does blue mean? Because the meaning seems to change as I go through the document. So before we start on looking at this in detail and looking at what we're doing, can I have some clarification on that, please? Because I've been through the lot and I've got a couple of pages of notes, and I really want this done properly, Chairman. Thank you.
Well, I think what we're going to do now, we will deal with the age matter, which is set out on page 85 of the agenda. And perhaps I'll ask Mr. Hughes to explain the different colours. I'm assuming the insurance write-off in red is something completely new. But perhaps, Mr. Hughes, can you explain? Then we'll deal with this on its own, the age policy, until we come to consensus.
Chair, can I perhaps speak before Paul Hughes speaks?
Yes, of course, Richard.
Firstly, I'm not clear where Councillor Hyman's got a track change version of the report. The report that's being published on the website is not a track change version. It is the final definitive version. And that's certainly what I'm referring to, is the one that's being published on the website. The track change version is, track changes, as you will know, are used so that when officers are exchanging copies of the report, they can see what changes other people have made. But the published version of this agenda is not a track change version. And that's the one we should be referring to.
If I can clarify then, so if we take an example on the policy page 65, Chairman, if we go to the first page of the policy, annex 2 here, page 65, yeah,
that's a kind of colourful page with this in it.
Yeah, the one that says in red, 1st of April 2020 underneath it.
Yeah.
This is the final version in front of me. This isn't, that red does not indicate that you've removed that then, because of the 1st April 2020 date.
This is not a track change document. The yellow highlight.
This is the final version you've put in front of us. Yeah?
Councillor Hyman, don't keep interrupting, please. Let Mr. Homewood respond.
The red is to indicate the dates. The yellow highlights are the pieces that have changed since the earlier version of the report. So Paul Hughes has highlighted in yellow those bits. I don't know why some paragraphs are in red. Perhaps Paul can explain that. But it is not a track change document in any sense of the word. And I don't know, Paul can explain why the paragraphs are in different colours, perhaps.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Mr. Hughes.
Yes, the only reason that they're in different colours is because we had one report originally that went to you and the policy was changed. And then for my benefit, I've done it in different colours as I was working through to ones that I'd already changed and ones that were further changes following the previous committee. So it was, as I was working through it, just because it was one colour previously, and then we went to committee, and then from there we had the new standards come in, and that committee report was cancelled. And then we had further changes when they actually brought out the standards. And so it was just for me the colours are, but it's the final document. It's anything coloured is just so you know from the previous policy, these are the main differences in two policies.
So if it's highlighted in yellow, what does that mean?
It's changed from the existing policy now.
Right. And like insurance write-offs on page 85 is in red. Is that because that's new?
Sorry?
Page 85, insurance write-offs, that's in red. Is that because that's new?
Yes, that's new.
Right, okay.
So, okay. Chairman, when we're told it's not a track changes document, what it does is track the changes for us.
No, I think we're getting technical. Track changes has lines to it and dates down the side, and that is technically a track changing. This shows changes. So I think we're getting into the world of technical IT, which I would like to try and avoid at all costs, if we could.
I'm on a different planet, Chairman.
Yeah. Thank you. So can we deal with the age? Because I think we've mostly addressed that at this time, and the feelings of the committee as to whether what we should do. Certainly, I'll take it when we make these decisions. Paul, has this got to go to council and then be published in the papers, or what's it got to do, Paul?
Check your name.
Sorry, Chairman, I missed that. Didn't hear you.
Yeah, that's okay. You had your hand up, and also I said, does this go to council and or is it our decision? That's it, and then do we have to publish a notice?
We don't have to publish a notice, and it's dealt with by yourselves.
Oh, thank you.
It's not a mandatory policy. This is one that we've chosen to do.
Okay.
The reason I had my hand up was just to ask if I gave you the ages of our vehicles, would that help in any way?
No, well, you can tell us, but whether it will help or not, yeah.
I was just going to say we've got first registered vehicles from 2007. We have 4 of those. We have 3 that are registered in 2008, 11 in 2009, 10 in 2010, 11 in 2011, 29 from 2012, 2013 we've got 12, 2014 we've got 23, 2015 we've got 29, 2016 we've got 23, 2017 we have 20, 2018 8, 2019 8, and 1 vehicle that's 2020.
Thank you very much.
Do we have those written, Chairman? Sorry, do we have those written down somewhere in front of us? Because I didn't have time to write those down. Thanks.
No, we don't have that written down. It was just something that Mr. Hughes offered to tell us. I was concerned that some of our taxis appear to be 14 years old. And at the moment, there's nothing to control that, is there, Mr. Hughes?
No. We don't have any age policy at all at the moment.
Right, okay. Well, members, I'm looking at page 85 and the age of the vehicle. Now, Councillor Keane proposed that we put, I think, the dates in blue back a year, apart from the 2031. And the definition of the ultra low emission vehicle that Councillor Hyman asked about is defined by the Vehicle Certification Agency. So quite clearly there is a clear definition of that. So the proposal by Councillor Keane was to put the dates back 1 year in those, what are blue on my agenda, certainly on page 85. So age of vehicle. Members, have we any? And is that your wish that we do that, or is there any alternative view? Martin,
happy to second. Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. And so that's proposed. Are those in? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Actually, shouldn't we be making? This is a massive decision that's about to put a lot of people out of work. Can we please debate this properly?
We've had some considerable discussion on it, Councillor Hyman, and it's been seconded. And
so we're going to do the opposite to what all the consultees responded.
It has been agreed. Thank you. So really, we make a decision on people's lives in this manner. Councillor,
I have to object.
Well, you were voted against then, and that we have noted that, but otherwise it has been agreed.
I'm not sure what we've agreed, I have to say.
Yeah, thank you.
To move, Councillor Keane's proposal was to come to you in a moment, Councillor Keane, was to put those dates back 1 year, and that was seconded. If anybody is in favour of that.
I have to say I agree with Councillor Hyman. I think this requires, I don't think that's enough. And I think we need to talk about this sensibly. Just 1 year is not going to make any difference.
Well, have you got a counter, an amendment, Martin, that how long you want to put it back? Because I think, some vehicles being 14 years old now, we do have to think of the safety of our residents or people using the taxis. And at the moment it is uncontrolled. You could bring along any old vehicle, although it would have to pass the standard, but a very old vehicle could be brought in. So do you have an amendment?
Well, I mean, I would suggest, I'm just trying to look at the figures as we go along, that it's a shame that we didn't have these figures before and we could have done a proper analysis. However, I think that the 3 years, a vehicle being happened to be 3 years or younger is too excessive. I think that should be at least 4, because we all know that 3 years is when all the companies sell off their cars, and that's when they become cheaper. So 4 years at least, I would have said for that. And I think 7 years is to go from no age limit to 7. I can't understand it. It seems insane to me. So we have to, maybe 10 would be a more acceptable age. I do agree that captains are 14 years old is excessive, but I think going from that to 7, just like that in one go, even if we put it off for a year, given the circumstances, especially of COVID, I think it will kill the taxi trade.
Chairman, can I just on the procedural side of things, Richard's had his hand up as well, and May was to comment on, probably can comment on the policy. Just so I've got keep track of, and Kimberly and Georgina can as well, where we are. An amendment was proposed to put the date back by a year. So that amends, if that passes, then the recommendation is amended, but that doesn't mean that you've finished debating and discussing the main item of business. Now, unless I've got that wrong, that does still leave for Councillors Darcy and Hyman and anybody else who wants to comment the ability to continue discussing the policy, and whether they wish to propose a further amendment. Of course they can, and then that would be debated and voted on, and then come back to discuss or debate and then vote on the main as amended if the amendment passes resolution. So I think we should just agree where we are with those things. And Richard, I can see wants to come in, but if you have passed the amendment, come back to the main item of business as amended, continue to discuss it, and then perhaps Councillor Darcy and Councillor Hyman can continue to raise those issues, which are obviously they feel very strongly about. But yes, Richard's got his hand up, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I will come to Richard in a moment, but I agree. Yes, that there was an amendment which was seconded, but which is there, and then we can go on to discuss that, and it could be further amended. I mean, this is the problem of these Zoom meetings. You can't really see what people want and what is happening. They're virtually impossible with any proper statutory meeting to deal with. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think anybody would dispute the taxi trade has been hit badly by COVID, and we do need to take cognizance of that in moving this forward. I think we also have to bear in mind that the council has declared a climate emergency. It's made a commitment to reduce its carbon emissions and to encourage the community and businesses to reduce their carbon emissions as well. The government has quite clearly announced that by 2030, you will not be able to buy a new petrol or diesel vehicle. So there will be a cut-off point anyway when the trade will no longer be able to buy a petrol or diesel vehicle. An ultra-low emission vehicle is clearly defined. It's defined as a vehicle, bear with me, that emits less than 75, and I did find the definition, and it's
75 grams of CO2.
75 grams per kilometre of CO2. So there is a clear definition of an ultra-low emission vehicle. So we know what we're talking about with ultra-low emission vehicles. Zero emission vehicles are full electric vehicles, not hybrids. The trade has been turning to ultra-low emission vehicles over a period of time. But if we look back at why do we want to impose an age limit on a vehicle, we have a duty to protect the public and a duty to protect the public that are using vehicles as taxis or private hire. We also have a duty to ensure that the vehicles they're using that are badged by Waverley are of a good standard. And as we all know, vehicles suffer significant wear and tear, and certainly in a large area like Waverley, they do a considerable mileage as well. So we have to ensure that A, mechanically the vehicles are safe, and B, that cosmetically they're of a good standard. And I can remember going back 20 or 30 years when private hire vehicles, where people were complaining that they felt like they were sitting on the road going along because the seats had collapsed in the back of the vehicle through wear and tear. So there are lots of reasons for wanting to impose an age limit on a vehicle, because vehicles don't last forever, they wear out. And yes, they'll pass an MOT, but that's only part of the story. A vehicle can pass an MOT but have dents all over it, it can have torn seats inside and everything else. And it's all those standards we want to see for vehicles that have got Waverley's badge on them and that Waverley are condoning the use of. So there are lots of reasons for thinking about age limits on vehicles. We have to balance that against the businesses and their viability, and certainly take account of the COVID and the impact that's had on the trade, just like it's had on lots of other businesses. So there needs to be some recognition of that and some flexibility. And people have talked about extending it to 4 years from date of first registration for vehicles. That's probably not unreasonable under circumstances. And extending the age limit to 10 years at this stage, which you can then, as people have already pointed out, can review again in 4 years' time, when hopefully we're out of the COVID crisis and businesses are bouncing back, as the government has said that businesses will bounce back after this. So there may be an interim position here where you do allow vehicles up to 4 years from the date of first registration and make the age limit 10 years old, but subject to 2 MOT tests a year and that sort of thing, to make sure they are being properly maintained once they're of a certain age. So I think let's just try to put some context to it about why we're talking about age limits. They're not unusual. Many local authorities have age limits on their vehicles, some much stricter than we're talking about today. And those, haven't changed because of COVID. But for us, it is a new requirement. So yes, it's something you probably need to deal with delicately and perhaps phase in over a period of a number of years. But bear in mind the national agenda for moving away from petrol and diesel vehicles, and the fact that you won't be able to buy petrol and diesel vehicles from 2030 anyway. So if you allow them up to 4 years from date of first registration, by 2034, there will be no petrol or diesel taxes anyway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Martin, let's flick something up. Perhaps you'd like to say it, Martin.
Yeah, I just did a quick, I've got my spreadsheet and I managed to get the date, the times, the numbers that Richard gave us. So I've done a quick calculation, and I calculate that if we brought in a 10-year rule, that would require 39, which is 20% of the vehicles to be removed, which, although it's quite a lot in one go, given they're all going to be over 10 years old, it seems reasonable. And given the aim that is to try and two things, one, safety, and the second thing is to try and introduce lower emissions, then I think that's an acceptable compromise from the 7 years personally. The following year, there would be another 15%, then it would be another 6%, and then 12%. So we're talking about increments quite substantial, so that by whenever 4 years' time is, we would have removed something in the region of half of the vehicles.
Right. Okay, thank you. So are you proposing that we change 7 years in this document to 10?
Yes. And to 4 for the age.
So 4 for the age in that first paragraph, and then 10 for the somebody have you
Chairman.
got?
Sorry.
Who's I can't see.
Councillor Hyman. Obviously, I'm of a mind with Councillor Darcy in making sure we do right by the taxi drivers. Certainly, we have to bear in mind that age of a vehicle, it does not equal safety or emissions. They are separate, right? We're in the real world here. We're not just, in theory, going to chop out 20 or 30% and put a load of people out of business. We have, as the taxi drivers have told us, for those who've read the papers, we have got prestige taxi businesses around, a number of them, and they drive older cars. And that's why we've got this number of older cars there. They are high quality cars. You cannot afford to go out and buy them until they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. They are going to get really hit by even this 4-year rule. We are going to end up where we don't have the top end of the market being looked after here by our people, because it's our rules. This is gold plating. I'm alongside Councillor Darcy, but I really think that what we need to do is to look first at what we should be doing and debate what we should be doing, all right, before we pass any resolutions. If we could do it that way, and before we put in any, because nobody has been told here really clearly, for those who haven't been through all the papers, what the drivers have said in terms of age related. So what I'd like, if Councillor Darcy doesn't mind me interrupting his flow, to ask the officers if they will give us everything that members need to know in terms of what drivers have said, in terms of the effect on the age of the vehicles that it will have on them, and what they want us to put forward as a resolution from what the drivers have said, so that all members are clear and it's not coming from me or anybody else who's likely to be doubted. Could we do that, please? And would Councillor Darcy mind agreeing with that, perhaps as a way forward?
Well, I think what the drivers have said is in the consultation, and members will doubtless have read that, because it's not only what the drivers said, obviously it's what national law says and what safety grounds we wish to impose. So it can't just be a one-way thing. This was a consultation, and we have to take that into account, but we also need to take into account safety and the standard that we want to.
You're right. We have completely different tests, Chairman, for safety and standards. All the rest we've got it all in our papers here. That's not the issue we're talking about. This is about age of a vehicle. This isn't about safety, and it isn't about emissions. Those are covered separately by all the rules we have that constrain our drivers. And they're not concerned, obviously, about reducing safety levels in any way. What they want to make sure is they're in business.
Okay, Councillor
Martin, please, Chair.
Councillor Martin.
I'm completely new to this, but why don't we go by the mileage? I personally don't want to get into a taxi which has done 200,000 miles. Can we put a limit and then say if they've gone over 200,000 miles, they have to scrap the vehicle?
That's a very good question that I will put to officers or the solicitor or whatever.
Chair, I think again, mileage alone is not a clear indicator of whether a vehicle is suitable or not. There are some modern vehicles that have done several 100,000 miles, and provided they've been maintained properly, are perfectly capable of continuing to be used. So I think, again, it's not an absolute criteria. Mileage alone is not an absolute criteria. I've been trying to look, because in my previous role, we had an exemption for vehicles, older vehicles that were in exceptional condition, which allowed officers discretion to allow a vehicle to go over 10 years or be registered beyond 4 years at first registration if it was an exceptional condition and was a high quality vehicle. So it gave a bit of flexibility to cover the issues I think that Councillor Hyman's raised. But in general terms, the majority of vehicles used as taxis and private hire vehicles do not fall into that category. I do recognise that in Waverley we do have a higher proportion of our vehicles that are high quality cars used for airport runs, as they used to be, not so much now, and other prestige travel. So there needs to be a bit of flexibility built in here, and I've been trying to find whether we've put an exemption in there for vehicles of exceptional condition beyond the age limits. And I think that gives you the right balance then between the two. And if it isn't in, we need to think about putting something in there. And I've tried to message Paul to ask if it is in there anywhere.
Well, we'll go to Paul and see if he knows. Paul, what is there anything?
Not to do with the age of the vehicle, but our policy is same with any policy we have. It's like with when they ask for exemption, it's only a policy, it's only guidance. And if people aren't happy with and they want to bring a particular vehicle up, we would bring it to committee if there was a particular vehicle that somebody was bringing up.
So that is there, and that is something that we currently do.
It's something we currently do with vehicles, because you might get some people like want to do certain things with, I don't know, an ice cream van or something. It doesn't fit in our policy, so we bring that to committee to be approved or not. We have the limousines to be. We don't actually mention regarding age, but we treat it the same. If someone's got a particular vehicle that's of an age, like, I don't know, a 1930s Rolls Royce, and they've got a particular use for it, we would bring that to committee with their requirements for exemption from the policy.
Thank you. That is useful. Thank you very much. Okay. I think then, Martin, you have proposed that 3 years be changed to 4 and 7 be changed to 10. Is there a seconder for that?
Please, the second, Chairman.
Thank you. I don't know who that was, but whoever it was, somebody put their hand up, and I think Councillor Keane, I saw your hand up. So, colleagues, I'll ask now for you to indicate if anybody against changing the 3 years to 4 and the 7 to 10. That seems the easiest way of dealing with it.
Yes, as a matter of principle and as a matter of Article 13 of the Constitution, take it as a point of order, if you would then, Chairman. I really feel that we should not be making any decisions, and I agree with Councillor Darcy's motion there, except for the fact that members still haven't been given the information they need to decide whether 1 year putback is the right thing to do. I've got taxi drivers in here who have said a couple of years actually, but nobody's discussed whether it should be 1 or 2 or 3 years putback, or whether we should what we should be doing. We seem to be making arbitrary decisions, totally contrary to Article 13 of our Constitution, where we need the information before we make the decision. And I would ask, please, if Councillor Darcy would delay his motion until officers have explained quite clearly to members what numbers in terms of age the taxi drivers are telling us that we should be looking at. No arbitrary decisions here, please. Common sense. This is people's lives, for goodness sake.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Now, in the papers you should have received and read, it is outlined in some detail. And we can't just go on talking for hours about what each individual wants.
Can we just ask the officers to give us a summary, or can we not? Are we going to stitch everyone up by I don't know. Why not ask the officers, Chairman? Please, just ask the officers to give us a summary so that members make an informed decision. Where's the problem with that?
I think the summary is here, but Mr. Hughes, if you're prepared to summarise generally, I'm quite happy for that to happen.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as you stated, all the comments are in the annexes 3 and 5, which should be 3 and 4. However, generally, the feeling from most of the drivers, they're not happy with us in reintroducing, because we used to have an age policy which was 4 and 10, and we removed it a number of years ago. Yeah, generally, they're not happy about any age policy coming back in.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's in the papers, as you have said. And I think, as Councillor Darcy said, that they're 14 years old does give us some great cause for concern, and there has to be some control on that.
Councillor Davidson has his hand up, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chairman. We did have a substantial debate about this when this issue first came up and the revisions for the taxi policy came up last year. Admittedly, this was before the pandemic and the lockdowns had such a deleterious impact on the economy and on the well-being of our drivers. So it's something which is new. I sense that when we had the debate last year and the drivers were in attendance and were airing their own views, we did, as a committee, listen attentively to what they had to say. But I think we've been driven by other pressures to introduce a change to try and improve the quality of the environment in which our community lives. And that has been what has driven the age limits that we've been proposing. But I fully understand that with the economy being what it is and the impact on our drivers from complete lack of business over the last 18 months, that we should do something to address that issue. And slipping it 1 year, as I supported earlier on, I think is perfectly reasonable. Making it a 4 or 10 years is, to my mind, not such a significant issue, but we do need to put into place some kind of age limitation on the vehicles which are running around our community. And that's perfectly in order and something which we discussed at substantial length last year. So I think, Councillor Hyman, I can't remember whether you're on the committee at that time or not, but there was a substantial debate then. So I would be quite happy myself to support a 4 to 10 year change rather than the 3-7. But I suspect this will probably come up for review in the not too distant future again. What I would ask is we as a committee consider making a review next year as to whether the economy and the well-being of our drivers is sufficiently back in order, whether we need to probably shift the 1 year to 2 years. But that's something which we don't have to decide on now. It's something which we can, as a committee, relook at next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, we now have, has anybody else got their hand up now?
Councillor Darcy, Chairman.
Councillor Darcy.
Yeah, I just wanted to reassure Councillor Hyman that I had read all the taxi drivers' comments and I was concerned by them, but I realised that we have to balance things, and I think by possibly a combination of the two proposals, one is to put things back a year and the second one is introducing 4 and 10, that would seem to be a perfectly fair compromise. And the exemption allows for those people with vintage vehicles to get their taxis registered. So it seems that that's, and it is clear that we want to introduce lower emission vehicles. And although Councillor Hyman says that age isn't a factor, it very much is a factor in emissions, I can assure him. So I would be happy for us to combine the two things so that we had a 1 year pushback and then a 4 and a 10, if everyone else is agreeable to that.
Yes, thank you. Seconded. I think enough people nodding to take that as a second. Thank you, councillors.
Sorry, Chairman.
So I know, Councillor Hyman, I'm going to stop now because we're going to go on forever. We've now got a proposal that has been seconded and I'm going to take a vote on it. And that is that the dates on, we're looking at page 85, so we're quite clear what we're dealing with. That, for those that got it, is in blue. The dates will drop back by except for the write-off. I think the write-off is quite important, that should stay at 2021, that's in red. But otherwise, the dates all move back by 1 year, and 3 becomes 4, and 7 becomes 10. So that is what we are voting on. Those in favour, please show.
Agreed.
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 Anyone against, please? Any abstentions?
Yes, I would wish, in view of COVID, and I know what the economic effects are, that we should be going for 5 and 10 with the exception. I'd be happy with that. But
no, it's been carried, Councillor Hyman, I'm afraid.
I'm just making my position clear so people don't think that I'm objecting in principle to what Councillor Darcy is saying. I would have liked to have debated it and given my reasons as to why 5 years would be more sensible. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Now, on other matters in the papers to be introduced, generally going through, members, if you have any other items that you wish to discuss before we come to the final resolution, please indicate. No hands up.
Well, except mine. Can we go back to that issue of the date on the 1st May?
Just a minute, Mr. Hyman. I'll let anybody else go first. And Mr. Hughes has his hand up. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One was the door signs on the vehicles. We have got a couple of samples that we're proposing. I just wanted to get members' feelings whether they wanted an oval one or a square one. I believe Kimberly has them, so she can put them up on the screen.
Yeah.
I have them here anyway. But also, one of the comments, we're only proposing for them to go on the private hire doors at the moment, but one of the comments was suggesting that the taxis also have one put on them. So this would be the Hackney carriage one in blue, either square or an oval one. You can put the oval one up, please, Kimberly.
Yeah, just changing it over.
We've still got the square one up.
Yeah, there we are.
Oh, well, don't like that.
So that would be for the Hackneys, and if you could put the private hire ones up, please, Kimberly.
You only sent me those two.
I'll send you both. But I've got the other ones. The others are the same, but in red, and the private hire ones say the vehicle must be pre-booked on them instead of where it's got taxi on those ones. The only one we've put in the report was to go on private hire vehicles. I only put the taxi ones in case you want to nominate that following the comment in the responses to the consultation.
Okay, members, can we just deal with that item, because otherwise we'll get very confused. We said that we wanted them in a previous meeting on the private hire, so it's quite clear that they can't just apply for hire if they're not pre-booked. So the question is, do we like the oblong one or the round one? And do we want to carry that to taxis as well? Because that's only a comment from one in the consultation. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I would have gone for the oval one, but the fact that the number is rectangular and it spoils the oval, I would go for the rectangular one. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else just on this issue, please, so that we can clear this issue? Did you want to speak on this issue, Councillor Hyman? Okay, thank you. Just your hand was up. Okay, so members, just an indication who was in favour of the rectangular one. If you just put your hand up. And the circuit, the oval one. The rectangular one has it. And do we want to extend that to taxis, or we just stick with the private hire? Should we extend it? If you wish to extend it to taxis, please show. And those that are against extending it to taxis. Oh, well, that's been it. That the vote then is to extend it to the taxis as well.
Can I just ask a question, if I may, Chairman?
Whoever that is, yes.
That's Jerome.
Go on, Jerome. Yes, please.
Who pays for the signage?
We do.
We do.
With the private.
If the council pays for it, my view would be that would be changed, and I think it would be good to have it on the Hackney carriages as well.
I think I might have misled you. I like Mr. Hughes. I think perhaps we only pay for the private hire. Mr. Hughes?
Yeah, the proposal was that we would pay for the first one if we set a date for when these come in. So we were proposing to give them by May. So it gives us a month to give them to all drivers, and we would pay for the initial one. But any subsequent ones or any new vehicles licensed after that, of the first of the end of May, they would have to pay for themselves.
And the cost?
The cost of them, to be honest, I haven't got that with me. I did go and ask for an email, but I think from what I remember, it was around the £10.
Well, my feeling is that if we're insisting on this, it would not be unreasonable for us to have to purchase them for the driver, and also make sure that we are actually ensuring that they get the appropriate one put into place, because we can control it.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Yeah, Chairman, perhaps Mr. Hughes can tell us, you know, what is wrong with the old signs on the taxis? I mean, even going around the town, they look perfectly good to me. What is the reason for changing it onto the taxis?
It's just regarding the standards. At the moment, we only have a plate on the back and a little number on the side. The main reason is to try and differentiate between the vehicles that the private hire had pre-booked written on it, so people know that they're not private hire, they have to be pre-booked in advance, and it's to put it on the doors to make it quite clear.
I understand that. I do understand the difference, but what I'm asking is, if the taxi plates that they have now are in good order, why would we want to change them? You know, and spend money that may be unnecessary, and just put them on the private hire.
Okay, that's the plan, was just to put it on the private hire. The only reason we brought the taxi in was because somebody mentioned it in the consultation. So we asked whether you wanted to move it onto taxis. The main, like I said, the main purpose is to make it quite clear that it is a pre-booked only. The plate on the back that the vehicles have existingly don't mention that, and they're a lot smaller. These would be A3 on the side of the vehicles, and they would quite clearly identify them as being a Waverley private hire as well, rather than a vehicle from another council.
Yeah, thank you. The indication that I had was clearly not in favour of putting them on the taxis, so we will stick with the private hire, so that it's quite clear. I think that's what the taxi drivers want, so it's quite clear what's a taxi and what isn't. So that is the way we will go with the oblong one on the private hire. Now, other matters. Is there any other matter you wish to draw to our attention, specifically, Mr. Hughes?
I haven't got any other matters to particularly bring to your attention.
Thank you. Okay, members, if you'll put your hand up when Councillor Darcy.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say something regarding the previous matter, but you didn't notice my hand.
No, sorry.
One of the consultants, consultant responses said that, yeah, there was an issue of if you have a certain types of vehicles, like chauffeur-driven ones, you don't want a sticker on the side, and would there be exemptions to
There are exemptions for certain vehicles, yes. They
Thank you.
don't even have to have the plate, but it is listed, and there are.
Yeah. I just wanted to check. And also, taxis have a light on the top as opposed to private hire vehicles, don't they?
They have to have a taxi sign, yes.
Yeah. So I just wondered why that wasn't sufficient for people to be able to tell whether it was a taxi or not. But
Probably it is. Okay. Anybody else then on other matters within the papers that we have before us?
We've got Richard Homewood's hand up. Oh, we took it down again.
Mr. Homewood, then.
Sorry, Chair. All I was going to say was the whole point of the sign on the side of a private hire car is that when it pulls up alongside somebody, it's there in front of them and it says this vehicle must be pre-booked.
Yes.
There is no doubt because quite often there is nothing visible from the front of a private hire car as it approaches you. Because they don't allow them to have front-facing signage or a light on the roof. So as soon as it pulls up alongside somebody who may be wanting to use it, it says quite clearly on the door they're about to open, this vehicle must be pre-booked, to leave them in no doubt that they can't just flag it down. So that's the reason for it, and lots of other councils do it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's useful. Thank you very much. Okay, members, on the other issues that are in the documents, in your agenda papers.
Yeah, Councillor Hyman.
Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as with any policy, if you go through it word by word, you see that you find things which you wouldn't want to be included in the final version of it. And I think it would be intelligent if I'm correct in thinking where we are on the agenda, and that we will soon, having made the amendment to the age issues, we're probably coming to the recommendation, which is that we pass that we consider the outcome of the feedback from the consultation and the private hire licensing policy and agrees it. So I think that would be the next decision we make, is it?
But to agree what we've amended or anything else that you choose to amend as we go along.
Right, because it would probably be easiest if we were to cover typos and formatting issues, of which there are quite a number, and you don't want me to go through them at length here. But if I could take care of those with you outside of the meeting, by phone or with an officer by phone, and would have it, if we could also add to the recommendation that those could be done by the officer in agreement with the chairman.
Yes, that would be very good. The typos and any out of line alignments, if you could deal with that.
We've got the wrong year at the very beginning. Still,
yes,
Chairman,
I was going to myself was going to raise that. It still hasn't been changed from that. We should have been doing this 12 months ago. So it's April 2021, not 2020. That's on page 65. And I would ask Mr. Hughes, does the end date then slip back a year? Page 65, which is page 1 of the policy, it says effect period 1st of April 2020, where we can't be retrospective. So does that become 2021 to 2026? I could do with advice from the officers, please.
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, so that amendment is a textual amendment on the very first page. That's 2021 to 2026. Thank you.
And if you don't mind, Chairman, further to that, there are a couple of things that I don't think ought to be covered by a chairman's prerogative to in terms of typos and formatting. Those are that in paragraph 20 on page 89, it's because we're changing the rules slightly, basically, and we shouldn't do that without the committee at least hearing what changes ought to be made. It says that there's got to be a means of changing a spare wheel, but the way that it's worded, it doesn't actually cover the space saver. It implies that you can change a spare your space saver wheel without having the means to do so. The way that it's written, we ought to just make sure that that's written the right way round so that it does cover it. We need clarification, I think.
Can you just help me on, sorry, I'm on page 89, which para, which
Well,
number?
all of these things, I'm afraid, are covered in 3 different places in this document, Chairman. So I got quite annoyed with it about finding all these things everywhere. But we are at page 8, paragraph 20 on page 89. Which says,
It's on page 88 of my one.
Ah, yes, it's on page 88. That's why I was confused. Yeah, right. I'm with you.
maybe
now.
I'm on a past copy. I don't know. Apology if that's me. But it does say that we need matching wheel. Now, matching can mean same tyre, exactly the same tyre, same tread depth on the tyre, same style of aluminium wheel, same size width or not. Matching is not a term which actually it has any real meaning and leaves everything in the air. So we'd need to allow a little common sense in rewording that, I think. Is it just the wheel design? Is it just the size of the wheel that matters? Does it matter whether it's steel or alley, the spare that's being put on? Does the tyre, we would normally say, I think with most taxis, we would require that we have the same tyre on the same axle. You know what I mean? We would say make and whatever of tyre and size of tyre. So we do need to be a little bit clear about what we are allowing in terms of safety there.
I think what you just said is covered by the construction and use regulations on all vehicles. But I think what they are meaning, and Mr. Hughes will confirm that, is that you don't run it with a different sized wheel on. I'm assuming that is what it means. Mr. Hughes?
Yes, that's correct, Chairman. We can alter that. It wasn't part of this console. It's part of the old policy, but I can reword that if you wish.
Just so that it's clear, but it is already existing policy, yes, as you say.
Yeah, but of course, a space saver isn't the same size wheel, but they are legally allowed.
That's why you can only use it to the end of the fare. Yes, yeah.
We still have the issue of tinted windows that's been raised by as to whether or not we're going to let them borrow a machine, so that when they go to the shops to buy their new car, to ensure that they are not breaking our rules buying a standard car. And there is an issue there. I don't know whether that's been satisfied. I just don't think that we should be expecting our taxi drivers to complain about the same thing over and over and over again, and us just dismissing it as though, they're being silly, when of course they're not. It's a practical issue when they are spending many thousands of pounds buying a car, that they do not want to have to replace the glass because the manufacturer of that car does not tell you how much light goes through it, and it happens to not then be found by Waverley that it doesn't conform. So, we do need to clear that one up.
Can you just pause a second, please, Richard? Richard, you're muted.
Apologies, Chair. Paragraph 26 is quite clear that the vehicle must comply with the road vehicle's construction and use regulations in terms of tinting. Now, if the tinting is more than allowed under those regulations, they wouldn't be allowed to sell the car. So if they're buying a new car, they wouldn't be allowed to sell it if its windows were too tinted and didn't comply with those regulations.
And we are not imposing any gold plating on that. Is that what you're saying?
That's the way I read it, Chair.
Because our policy is generally gold plating.
If you looked at the figures, our requirement is less than the construction and use regulations. So they would be breaking the law.
Sure?
The law if they did. Not our rules. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. We did discuss this. This was previously because it used to be a lot tighter than this. It was 70% light transmission. The constructions and use regulations refer to the windscreen and the driver's front door. And the windscreen must be 75%, and the driver's door and the front passenger door is 70% light transmission. The rear of the car windows aren't covered by the construction and use, and that is set by Waverley. And it used to be, we used to have it at 70%, and following previous consultations and issues brought up by drivers, the committee decided to revert that and review it, and brought it down to 22% to make the windows a lot clearer to resolve this thing. So currently, and that's what we consulted on, was a reduction to 22% instead of 70%.
Thank you. Thank you. That makes that clear. Councillor Hyman, and anything else?
Yes, these are issues which are repeated on page 106, 107, and 111. So we can just, if we can, just make sure that all the annexes and bits and pieces tie up with any changes that are made. Now, let me see, what else did we have further down? I can cover anything else, I think, with you outside of the meeting, just to check with you outside of the meeting, Chairman. I think I'm reasonably happy with what we've got there on that page.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your time on that. There are some issues that need raising, but I don't need to trouble the committee with them. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any items? Then we will move to the.
Nobody indicating, Chair.
Thank you very much. Then we'll move to the recommendation, which is the Licensing and Regulatory Committee considers the outcome of the feedback from the consultation of draft Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy and agrees it as amended. And we have made the amendments on the age, as you are all aware. Is that agreed as amended?
Agreed.
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 Agreed with your right to make to agree formatting changes with that and typo changes with the officers. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There is no need to exclude the press and public. We've received learned advice from Daniel as we've gone along, and that, members, concludes our business today. Thank you very much. Order, order.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you,
Thank you,
officers, for your
Chairman. Thank you,
Thank you very
officers.
much, Chairman.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Chairman.
Goodbye.